The Great Council chamber on Station Nexus 7 had never been so quiet. 12 different alien species sat around the massive curved table, their eyes fixed on the human in the center chair. Commander Hyunwoo looked ordinary. His brown hair was messy. His clothes were simple. His face showed no fear at all. The holographic display behind him showed a world that should have killed him months ago. Kepler 442c floated in the blue light, a brown and red planet covered in storms. The data scrolling beside it made every alien in the room uncomfortable. Acid rain that could melt through starship armor. Temperature swings that went from freezing, cold to burning hot every single day. Creatures that hunted in packs and could tear apart a battle tank. It was a Class Z death world. Nothing was supposed to live there for more than 3 days. Hyunwoo had been there for 8 months. Alone. Doctor. Nari stood up from her seat. She was the best scientist in the galaxy when it came to studying how different species survived. Her hands shook slightly as she held her datapad. She had run every test she could think of. She had checked the numbers again and again. Nothing made sense. Commander Hyunwoo, she said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. You crash-landed on Kepler 442c 243 standard days ago. Your ship was destroyed. Your crew died on impact. You had basic survival supplies. For maybe 1 week. The alien delegates leaned forward. The Vorthak representative looked like a giant crystal that changed colors when it spoke. Right now, it was glowing a confused purple. The Drakmori warriors were covered in thick scales and had fought in 100 wars. Even they looked puzzled. The Nelith floated in their special gas containers, their cloud-like bodies shifting nervously. The planet has surface temperatures that change by 600 degrees every day, Dr. Nari continued. The air is poison. The storms can strip flesh from bone. The local predators are some of the most dangerous we have ever recorded. She paused and looked directly at the human. How are you alive? Hyunwoo shifted in his chair and scratched his head. He looked around at all the serious alien faces staring at him. Then he smiled a little. Well, he said slowly, have any of. You ever had pizza? The silence that followed was complete. Several aliens looked at each other. The Vorthak crystal stopped glowing entirely. One of the Drakmori warriors made a confused, growling sound. Pizza? Dr. Nari repeated the word carefully, like she was trying to understand a complex scientific term. Yeah, pizza, Hyunwoo said, leaning back in his chair. You know, bread, tomato sauce, cheese, maybe some vegetables or meat on top. You cook it until the cheese melts and the edges get crispy. Then you share it with people. The head of the Galactic Council, a tall being, called Tai Min from the Diplomatic Corps, cleared his throat. Commander, we are trying to understand how you survived conditions that would kill our best soldiers in hours. This is a matter of galactic security. Right. I get that. Hyunwoo nodded. But I am telling you about pizza because it matters. See, when I crashed on that world, I could have just focused on staying alive day by day. Eat whatever I could find, hide from the storms, run from the big, scary animals. He stood up and walked over to the holographic display of Kepler 442c. The planet rotated slowly, showing its acid-scarred surface and violent storm systems. But that is not living, he said, touching the display. That is just not dying yet. There is a difference. The Nelith representative spoke up, its voice coming through a translator that made it sound like wind through trees. We do not understand this distinction. Survival is survival. Hyunwoo turned back to face the room. Okay, let me explain it different. When I was stuck on that planet, yeah, I had to figure out shelter and water and food. Basic stuff. But I also had to figure out how to stay human. Stay human? The crystal Vorthak asked, its colors shifting to curious yellow. Right. See, humans, we do not just eat to fuel our bodies. We cook food. We make it taste good. We sit together and share it and talk. Food is not just about calories for us. It is about connection, comfort, home. The room was quiet again, but this time it was a thinking quiet, not a confused quiet. Dr. Nari made notes on her data pad. You are saying that you survived by maintaining cultural practices? I survived by remembering that I was not just trying to not die, Hyunwoo said. I was trying to live, and for humans, living means making the best of whatever situation you are in, even if that situation is a planet trying to kill you every day. One of the Drakmori warriors, a female with dark green scales, spoke up. This is impossible. We sent 3 survey teams to Class Z worlds in the past decade. All of them died within days, even with advanced equipment and military training. Hyunwoo nodded respectfully. I am sorry for your losses, but maybe your teams were thinking about it wrong. Maybe they were so focused on fighting the planet that they forgot to adapt to it. Adapt how? The warrior demanded. Well, Hyunwoo said, walking back to his chair. Like I said, I made pizza. Sort of. I mean, it was not exactly like Earth pizza, but it was close enough. I figured out how to grow tomatoes in the cave soil. I made cheese from some of the emergency rations. I built an oven from crashed ship parts. The alien stared at him. Building an oven on a death world was not exactly standard survival procedure. The point is, Hyunwoo continued, I did not just survive, I made a life. A small one, sure, but still a life. I had routines, I had projects. I had things to look forward to, like making dinner. That kept me sane when everything else was trying to drive me crazy. Taemin leaned forward. Commander, our best scientists cannot explain how you are still alive. We have studied the recordings from your rescue. You were not just alive. You were healthy. Happy, even. You were gardening on a world where the soil should have burned through your skin. Yeah, well, Hyunwoo shrugged. Good soil is good soil, once you treat it right. And fresh vegetables make everything taste better. The session continued for 3 more hours. The aliens asked about his shelter, his water purification system, his methods for avoiding the predators. Hyunwoo answered all their questions, but he kept coming back to the same point. He had not just tried to survive. He had tried to live well. When the session finally ended, the delegates filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Dr. Nari stayed behind, still making notes. Commander, she said as Hyunwoo got ready to leave. One more question. Of all the things you could have made on that planet, why pizza? Hyunwoo paused at the door and smiled again. Because pizza is meant to be shared. Even when there was nobody there to share it with, making it reminded me that someday there would be again. Hope, you know? Sometimes that is the most important ingredient. 8 months earlier, the survey ship Harmony drifted through space like a metal bird with broken wings. Captain So Young gripped her command chair as alarms screamed throughout the bridge. Red warning lights flashed across every screen, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. Engine core is completely dead, reported Chief Engineer Minho from his station. His hands moved quickly across the control panels, but every reading showed the same terrible news. We have maybe 10 minutes before we lose life support too. So Young looked at the main display screen. The brown and red planet below them grew larger by the second. Kepler 442c had appeared in their navigation charts as a routine mapping target. Class Z Death World, but they were supposed to stay safely in orbit and scan from a distance. Now their dead engines were pulling them straight down into its atmosphere. Can we reach the escape pods? So, Young asked. Minho shook his head. The explosion damaged the pod bay doors. They will not open. In the back of the bridge, communications officer Hyunwoo worked desperately at his station. He was trying to send out a distress signal, but the planet's violent magnetic field scrambled every transmission. Static filled his headphones instead of the clean connection to galactic command he needed. No one is going to know we are here, he said quietly. The ship shuddered as it hit the first layers of atmosphere. Through the main window, they could see the planet's surface getting closer. Massive storms covered half the continents. Lightning jumped between clouds that glowed with strange colors. Even from space, they could see the acid rain falling in sheets across the landscape. "Strap in, everyone," So Young ordered. "We are going to try to land this thing." But the ship had other plans. As it fell deeper into the atmosphere, pieces began to break off. First, the communications array snapped away, spinning off into the poisonous air. Then the cargo bay doors tore loose. The hull started to crack under the pressure and heat. Hyunwoo grabbed his emergency pack from under his station. Inside were basic supplies that might keep someone alive for a few days. Water purification tablets, protein bars, medical kit, emergency shelter, standard survival gear that seemed laughably small compared to what was waiting for them below. The ship hit the ground hard. Very hard. When Hyunwoo woke up, everything was quiet except for the sound of his own breathing. His head hurt badly, and something heavy was pinning his legs to the floor. Above him, twisted metal and broken plastic showed where the ceiling used to be. Smoke drifted through the gaps, carrying the smell of burned circuits and something worse. He pushed the debris off his legs and stood up carefully. His left arm was cut and bleeding, but nothing seemed broken. Around him, the bridge was completely destroyed. Chairs were thrown against walls. Control panels sparked and smoked. The main display screen showed only static. "Captain," he called out. "Minho! Anyone!" Silence answered him. Hyunwoo climbed through the wreckage toward where the captain's chair had been. He found So Young still strapped in, but she was not moving. Her neck was bent at a wrong angle. Minho was nearby, buried under a fallen support beam. Neither of them was breathing. For a long moment, Hyunwoo just stood there in the broken ship. He was alone on a planet that killed everything that landed on it. His friends were dead. His ship was destroyed. His emergency supplies would last, maybe a week if he was very careful. Most people would have sat down and given up right then. Instead, Hyunwoo did something strange. He started humming an old song from Earth while he searched through the wreckage. It was a simple tune his grandmother used to sing while she cooked dinner. The melody helped him think clearly instead of panicking. He found more emergency packs scattered around the bridge. Most were damaged, but a few still had useful things inside. Water, food, medical supplies, basic tools. Not much, but something to work with. Then he remembered the ship's galley. Hyunwoo climbed carefully through the damaged corridors toward the back of the ship. Emergency lighting flickered on and off, casting strange shadows on the walls. Outside, he could hear the wind picking up. According to their scans, the planet had massive storms that came through every few hours. He did not want to be caught outside when that happened. The galley was partially collapsed, but the emergency food storage was built to survive crashes. Hyunwoo pried open the sealed compartments and found standard rations, basic seasonings, and something that made him smile for the first time since waking up. Dried tomatoes, a small bag of flour, some powdered cheese, basic ingredients that most people would see as just emergency food. Hyunwoo saw the beginnings of pizza. He stuffed everything useful into his pack and looked around for other supplies. From the engineering section, he grabbed some basic tools and electronic components. From the medical bay, he took extra water purification tablets and antibiotics. From the cargo hold, which was mostly destroyed, he managed to find a few packets of seeds from the hydroponics experiment they had been carrying. Outside, the wind was getting stronger. Through the cracks in the hull, he could see the sky turning, an ugly green color. The first storm was coming. Most survivors would have tried to stay in the ship wreckage for shelter. It seemed like the obvious choice. But Hyunwoo had studied the planet's data during their approach. The acid storms would eat through the damaged hull in hours. The metal would not protect him for long. He needed to find a cave. Hyunwoo slung his pack over his shoulders and climbed out through a hole in the side of the ship. The air outside burned his lungs even through the emergency mask he wore. The ground was rocky and covered with strange crystals that hummed with energy. In the distance, he could see mountains with dark openings that might be caves. The storm was getting closer. Lightning jumped between the clouds, and the air smelled like metal and acid. He had maybe 30 minutes before it hit. Most people would have run in panic, trying to get as far from the storm as possible. But Hyun-woo walked steadily toward the mountains, still humming his grandmother's song. He was not just looking for a place to hide. He was looking for a place to live. As he climbed over the rough ground, dodging the humming crystals and following animal paths between the rocks, Hyun-woo thought about what he would make for dinner. If he could find a cave with good air circulation, he might be able to build a small fire. If the cave had water, he could start cleaning his ingredients. If he was very lucky, he might even find some local plants that were safe to eat. The storm hit just as he found a deep cave in the mountainside. Rain that could dissolve metal fell like bullets on the rocks outside. Wind that could knock over. Trees howled through the valley. Lightning turned the sky white and purple and green. But inside the cave, Hyun-woo unpacked his supplies by the light of a small emergency lantern. He sorted through the food, the tools, the seeds. He planned how to set up a shelter deeper in the cave where the acid rain could not reach. And he thought about pizza. Not the perfect pizza from restaurants on Earth, but the kind of pizza he could make here with what he had. Simple ingredients, basic cooking, but made with care and hope. Outside, the planet screamed with fury. Inside the cave, a human being, prepared to turn a death world into something that felt like home. The storm would pass, and when it did, Hyun-woo would start building a life. 3 weeks had passed since the crash, and Hyun-woo was still alive. More than alive, actually. He was starting to understand this deadly planet in ways that surprised him. Every morning, he woke up in his cave as the temperature outside began to rise. He had learned that Kepler 442c had a pattern. The acid storms came every 3 days, always in the afternoon when the atmospheric pressure dropped. He could feel it in his bones now, like an old man feeling rain coming in his joints. The big predators that the Galactic Council called Death Stalkers hunted right after sunrise when the air was coolest. They looked like giant wolves with 6 legs and teeth like knives. Most species would have been terrified of them. But Hyun-woo had discovered something interesting about these monsters. They were afraid of fire. Not just regular fire, either. They would run from anything that glowed red or orange. Even his small camp stove made them nervous. It was knowledge. That could have saved the previous survey teams if they had thought to test it. Hyun-woo had also figured out the radiation crystals that grew everywhere on the planet. They pulsed with deadly energy in a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. For 20 minutes, they were dangerous to touch, but for 10 minutes after each pulse, they were just warm rocks that gave off perfect heat for cooking. Where other beings saw only chaos and death, Hyun-woo found patterns and opportunities. His cave had become something like a home. He had dug deeper into the rock, following an underground stream that provided fresh water. The water was slightly acidic, but his purification tablets made it safe to drink. Better yet, when he mixed the acid water with certain minerals from the cave walls, it became excellent soil for growing plants. In a small chamber deeper in the cave system, Hyun-woo had started a garden. The seeds from the ship's hydroponics bay were growing in soil that should have been impossible. Tomato plants reached toward lights he had rigged from salvaged ship components. Herb seeds sprouted in careful rows. He had even managed to grow some grain using flour that had started to sprout on its own. The garden was tiny compared to the farms on Earth, but it was enough. Fresh vegetables, herbs for flavor, grain for making bread. The basic ingredients for civilization. His workshop. area contained tools made from crashed ship parts, a water purification system built from medical equipment and electronic filters, solar collectors that charged power cells during the brief sunny periods between storms, and most importantly, an oven. The oven was Hyun-woo's greatest achievement on this world. He had built it from ship hull plates, insulation foam, and heating elements salvaged from the galley. The radiation crystals provided steady, controllable heat during their safe periods. It was not pretty, but it worked perfectly. Every few days, usually after the big storms passed, Hyun-woo made pizza. Not Earth pizza, exactly. The crust was made from grain he grew himself, mixed with purified water and a bit of yeast he had managed to culture from the ship's emergency supplies. The sauce came from his tomatoes, seasoned with herbs that grew surprisingly well in the cave soil. The cheese was processed from protein rations, not as good as real cheese, but close enough. Sometimes he added local ingredients he had tested carefully. There were mushroom-like things that grew near the underground stream. Some of the cave minerals, when ground up fine, added interesting flavors. He had even found some local plants that tasted almost like onions, though they were purple instead of white. Each pizza was a small celebration. Hyun-woo would sit by his underground stream, eating warm food and listening to the sounds of the cave, water dripping steadily, wind echoing from the entrance. Sometimes the distant roar of storms or predators outside, but inside his little world, there was peace. He was not just surviving anymore, he was living. Other survivors' emergency beacons had gone silent weeks ago. Their locations were marked by bones picked clean by scavengers and scattered by the endless storms. But from Hyun-woo's cave, thin streams of smoke rose into the sky every evening as he cooked dinner. The smoke was visible from orbit, though no one was looking for it yet. It was the signature of controlled fire, of organized cooking, of someone who had not given up on the small pleasures that made life worth living. Hyun-woo had established routines that kept him sane, morning exercises to stay strong, afternoon work in the garden or workshop while the storms raged outside, evening cooking sessions that filled his cave with the smell of fresh food. Before bed, he would write in a journal made from salvaged paper, recording everything he learned about the planet. He wrote about the storm patterns and the predator behavior. He recorded which plants were safe to eat and which minerals made good soil. But he also wrote about other things. How the cave walls looked beautiful when lit by his cooking fire. How good it felt to eat warm bread after days of cold rations. How the smell of tomato sauce reminded him of home. The journal was part survival manual and part love letter to the simple act of making a life in impossible circumstances. Month 2 brought new challenges. The planet's seasons were changing, and the storms were getting stronger. The temperature swings became more extreme. New types of predators appeared, drawn by the changing weather patterns. But Hyun-woo adapted. He dug his cave deeper, following the underground stream to chambers that stayed at constant temperature. He built better defenses around his garden area. He improved his oven design to use less fuel and cook more efficiently. Most importantly, he never stopped making pizza. It had become more than just food. It was proof that he was still human, still connected to the culture and traditions that made him who he was. Every pizza was an act of defiance against a universe that wanted to reduce him to just another set of bones on a hostile world. When Galactic Survey finally detected the impossible readings from Kepler 442c, they expected to find wreckage and remains. Instead, their scanners showed organized heat signatures, controlled atmospheric processing, chemical traces that suggested agriculture, and smoke, thin streams of smoke rising every evening like signals sent to the stars, announcing that life had found a way not just to survive on this death world, but to flourish. Down in his cave, Hyun-woo pulled another pizza from his improvised oven. The crust was golden brown, the cheese melted perfectly, the herbs adding just the right amount of flavor. He cut it into slices with a knife made from ship metal and sat down by his underground stream to eat. Above him, survey ships were finally approaching to investigate the impossible readings. But Hyun-woo did not know that yet. He was too busy enjoying his dinner and planning what to grow in his garden next week. The cave filled with the warm smell of bread and tomatoes. Outside, the planet continued its endless cycle of storms and fury. But inside, a human being had created something that felt like home. The rescue ship Meridian dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find wreckage and maybe some scattered remains. Instead, Captain Jin-ho stared at sensor readings that made no sense at all. "Run the scans again," he told his science officer, a young woman named Yu-jin, who specialized in analyzing crash sites. "I have run them 4 times, Captain," Yu-jin replied, checking her instruments again. "The readings are consistent. Organized heat signatures in a grid pattern, controlled atmospheric processing, chemical traces that suggest active agriculture. And sir, there are regular thermal blooms that look like controlled combustion." Jin-ho frowned at the data. His rescue team included members from different species. Vorthak archaeologist Krystal was supposed to help analyze any alien technology they might find. 2 Drakmori security specialists, Warblade and Shield Claw, were there in case they encountered the planet's dangerous wildlife. None of them had expected to find signs of civilization on a Class Z death world. Could be automated. "System's still running from the crash," suggested Warblade, checking his weapons for the 10th time. The large warrior was nervous about landing on a world that had killed so many others. "For 8 months?" Yu-jin shook her head. "No emergency system lasts that long, and these heat patterns are too organized, too purposeful. Someone is down. They're actively managing these systems." Captain Jin-ho made his decision. "Prepare the landing shuttle. Full environmental protection, armed escort, medical team ready. If someone survived down there, they are going to need immediate evacuation and treatment." The shuttle descended through Kepler 442c's poisonous atmosphere, while the crew watched their instruments nervously. The acid storms were between cycles, giving them a safe window to land. But everyone knew that could change quickly on this world. They set down near the heat signatures in a rocky valley surrounded by mountains. The landscape looked exactly as hostile as their reports had warned. Strange crystals hummed with radiation. The ground was scarred by acid rain. In the distance, they could see massive storm clouds building for the next weather cycle. But there was also something none of them had expected. Smoke was rising from a cave opening halfway up the mountainside. Not the black smoke of burning wreckage, but the thin gray smoke of a cooking fire. "Readings show the cave system extends deep into the mountain," Yu-jin reported as they climbed toward the opening. "Temperature inside is stable. Air quality is actually better than surface atmosphere." They reached the cave entrance just as someone emerged from the shadows inside. Hyun-woo looked surprised to see them, but not shocked or desperate like most crash survivors. He was tanned and healthy-looking. His clothes were patched but clean. His hair was longer than regulation, but he had obviously been taking care of himself. "Oh, hello," he said calmly, like he was greeting neighbors who had dropped by for a visit. "I was not expecting company today. Are you here about the crashed ship?" The rescue team stared at him. Warblade and Shield Claw had their weapons ready, expecting to fight off predators or deal with a traumatized survivor. Instead, they found a man who seemed more relaxed than most people after a routine spaceflight. "Commander Hyun-woo?" "Captain," Jin-ho asked, checking his identification scanner. "From the survey ship Harmony?" "That is me," Hyun-woo nodded. "I guess someone finally noticed we were missing. Come on in, the evening storms are starting soon. You do not want to be caught outside when those hit." He led them into the cave system, and the rescue team's confusion grew with every step. This was not a desperate survival shelter. It was organized, clean, and surprisingly comfortable. Solar-powered lights provided steady illumination. The air smelled like fresh bread instead of fear and desperation. You have been here for 8 months? Yu-Jin asked, taking medical readings with her scanner. Alone? Yeah, since the crash, Hyun-woo replied, leading them deeper into the caves. It was tough at first, but you learn the planet's rhythms after a while. The trick is not fighting it, but working with it. They passed his workshop area, where tools made from ship parts hung in neat rows. His water purification system hummed quietly in the background. Solar collectors charged power cells while protected from the harsh surface conditions. Then they reached his living area, and Captain Jin-ho stopped walking entirely. It looked like someone's kitchen back on Earth. A table made from ship hull plates, chairs carved from cave stones, shelves holding food supplies, cooking tools, and what looked like books made from salvaged paper. In one corner, an oven built from crashed debris glowed with warm light. I was just about to start dinner, Hyun-woo said. You are welcome to stay. I have plenty of food. The medical scans Yu-Jin was taking made her eyes go wide. Captain, his vital signs are better than baseline human normal. No radiation poisoning, no acid burns, no signs of malnutrition or psychological trauma. If anything, he seems healthier than when he left Earth. Kristall, the Vorthak archaeologist, was examining the oven with fascination. Its crystalline body was glowing bright yellow with curiosity. This construction shows remarkable adaptation to local conditions. He has used the radiation crystals as a heat source during their safe cycles. The engineering is primitive but extremely clever. It gets the job done, Hyun-woo said, checking something cooking inside. The temperature control is not perfect, but it works fine for baking. Baking? Warblade asked, his translator making his voice sound confused. Yeah. Bread mostly. Sometimes I make what you might call pizza, though it is not exactly like the ones back home. Hyun-woo pulled out what looked like a flat round of cooked dough topped with red sauce, melted cheese, and green plants. Want to try some? The rescue team exchanged glances. They had come expecting to find a traumatized survivor barely clinging to life. Instead, they found someone offering them homemade food. Commander, Captain Jin-ho said carefully, we need to get you off this planet immediately. Class Z worlds are not safe for extended habitation. Safe is relative, Hyun-woo replied, cutting his pizza into slices. I mean, yeah, it is dangerous if you try to fight it. But if you learn its patterns and work with them instead of against them, it is just another place to live, he handed. Each of them, a slice of pizza on plates made from ship hull metal. The rescue team stared at the food like it might be poisonous. Go ahead, Hyun-woo encouraged them. I have been eating this stuff for months. It is not going to hurt you. Captain, Jin-ho took a careful bite. The crust was crispy on the outside and soft inside. The sauce was tangy and flavorful. The cheese was not exactly like Earth cheese, but it was close enough. The herbs added just the right amount of seasoning. It was delicious. More than that, it was impossible. They were sitting in a cave on a world that should have killed them all hours ago, eating homemade food prepared by someone who should have been dead months earlier. How? Yu-Jin asked, taking another bite. How did you not just survive but create all this? Hyun-woo sat down at his table and smiled. I did not survive. I lived. There is a difference. Surviving is just about staying alive from one day to the next. Living is about making something worth staying alive for. Outside, the evening storms began. Wind howled through the valley. Acid rain fell like bullets on the rocks. Lightning turned the sky colors that had no names. Inside the cave, 6 beings from 4 different species sat around a simple table, sharing food that should not have existed on a world where nothing should live. I still do not understand, Captain Jin-ho said. The other crash sites we found were just bones and wreckage. They were probably focused on the wrong things, Hyun-woo replied. Fighting the planet instead of learning from it. Trying to maintain their old way of life instead of adapting to a new one. You cannot survive here by being stubborn. You have to be flexible. Warblade, the Drakmori warrior, was on his third slice of pizza. "This is very good," he admitted. "How do you make it?" For the next hour, while the storms raged outside, Hyunwoo told them about his life on Kepler 442c, how he had learned to read the weather patterns, how he had discovered which plants were safe and which crystals could be used as tools, how he had built his garden, his workshop, his home, but mostly, he talked about the importance of maintaining hope and dignity even in impossible circumstances, about how cooking good food was not just about nutrition, but about staying connected to the things that made life meaningful. When he finished explaining, the cave was quiet except for the distant sound of storms and the gentle bubbling of the underground stream. "Commander," Captain Jin-ho said finally, "you have done something that our best scientists said was impossible. You have not just survived on a Class Z world, you have thrived." Hyunwoo shrugged. "I just remembered that being human is not about where you are. It is about what you choose to do with whatever situation you find yourself in, and I chose to make pizza." The Galactic Council's emergency session had been running for 6 straight days, and nobody was any closer to understanding what they were dealing with. Commander Hyunwoo sat in the same chair where it all started, answering the same questions, over and over again while the galaxy's best experts tried to figure out how he had broken their understanding of what was possible. Dr. Nari looked exhausted. She had run every test known to galactic science on the human. Blood samples, genetic scans, psychological evaluations, brain imaging, cellular analysis. Her team had checked for hidden technology, genetic modifications, alien symbiotes, temporal anomalies, and things that did not even have names yet. The results were always the same. Hyunwoo was completely, absolutely ordinary. "There has to be something we are missing," Dr. Nari muttered, reviewing her data for the 100th time. "Humans cannot simply survive Class Z conditions through willpower and cooking." But that seemed to be exactly what had happened. The military implications were keeping the Drakmori High Command awake at night. General Steelfang, the highest-ranking warrior in their species, had requested private meetings with the Council leadership. If humans could colonize worlds that killed Drakmori soldiers, what did that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? "We have lost 3 full survey teams to Class Z worlds in the past decade," Steelfang growled during one closed session. "Elite warriors with the best equipment we can build. This single human survived with kitchen supplies and optimism. How?" The Vorthak Collective had assigned their most powerful computing crystals to analyze the probability matrices. The numbers kept coming back impossible. According to every model they could create, Hyunwoo should have died within 72 hours of the crash. Crystal Mind, the lead Vorthak scientist, presented their findings to the Council with harmonic tones that sounded confused. "We have calculated every possible variable. Weather patterns, predator behavior, resource availability, human physiology, psychological stress factors. In over 99% of our simulations, the subject dies within 1 week." "What about the other 1%? asked Taemin, the council leader. "The other 1% assumes variables that we do not know how to measure. Cultural factors, emotional resilience, what humans call hope. Our mathematics cannot quantify these things." The Nelith consciousness was having similar problems. Their vast group mind could process millions of thoughts simultaneously, but human individuality confused them. They could not understand how one person could maintain mental stability in complete isolation. Wind Voice, speaking for the Nelith Collective, floated closer to Hyunwoo during one session. "We are a community consciousness. We share thoughts and feelings across thousands of individuals. When one of us is alone, we become unstable very quickly. How did you maintain sanity with no mental connection to your species?" Hyunwoo thought about the question seriously. "I was not really alone," he said finally. "I was connected to my culture, my memories, my traditions. Every time I cooked a meal, I was connected to everyone who had ever taught me to cook. Every time I worked in my garden, I was connected to farmers going back thousands of years. The physical isolation was hard, but I was never culturally alone. The alien delegates looked at each other with confusion. Culture as a survival tool was not something they had considered. Meanwhile, Hyun-woo was becoming famous throughout the galaxy, whether he wanted to be or not. News services from a dozen different species were running stories about the impossible human. Scientists, military leaders, philosophers, and ordinary citizens all wanted to know his secret. The interviews were not going the way anyone expected. "Commander." "Hyun-woo," asked a Drakmori news reporter during a broadcast, "what advanced survival techniques did you use to defeat the Death World?" "I kept regular meal times," Hyun-woo replied. "Eating at consistent times each day helped maintain my body's natural rhythms and gave me something to look forward to." "But what about the deadly predators and acid storms?" "You learn their patterns and avoid them. It is not that complicated. Like the big hunting animals are afraid of fire, so I always kept a flame burning near my cave entrance. The storms come every 3 days, so I just stayed inside when they hit." "What special equipment did you build?" "Mostly just an oven." "Good. Bread makes everything more bearable." The reporters and scientists kept expecting complex answers involving advanced technology or secret techniques. Instead, Hyun-woo talked about the importance of having hobbies, maintaining hygiene, keeping a regular sleep schedule, and cooking food you actually want to eat instead of just choking down survival rations. Dr. Nari tried a different approach. She brought in xenopsychologists, experts who studied how different species thought and behaved. Maybe the answer was not physical, but mental. "Commander," said Dr. Blue Thought, a specialist in crisis psychology, "most beings faced with certain death experience panic, despair, and eventually complete psychological breakdown. You seem to have experienced none of these things. How?" "Well," Hyun-woo said, "I guess I never really accepted that it was certain death. I mean, yeah, it was dangerous. But dangerous and impossible are not the same thing. People have survived in harsh places before. My ancestors lived through ice ages, droughts, floods, wars. If they could figure out how to survive, so could I. But they had communities, tools, knowledge passed down through generations. And I had that too. In my memory, in my culture, in the skills people had taught me. Just because I was physically alone did not mean I was starting from zero." The breakthrough came when Dr. Nari realized they were asking the wrong questions. Entirely. This was not about surviving impossible conditions. This was about transforming them into livable ones. "You did not adapt to the planet," she said during one session. "You adapted the planet to you." Hyun-woo nodded. "Sort of, yeah. I mean, I could not change the weather or the predators, but I could change my little corner of the world. Make it comfortable, safe, productive, turn it into a place where I actually wanted to live instead of just a place where I was stuck. But that should be impossible on a Class Z world. Should. Be, maybe. But I did not know it was impossible when I started. I just knew I needed shelter, food, and water. Then I needed something to do with my time. Then I needed reasons to keep going. One thing led to another. The Council's final report, when it was released 6 months later, read like science fiction even to beings who traveled between stars. The document was over 3,000 pages long and included input from experts in biology, psychology, engineering, sociology, military science, and philosophy. The conclusion was simple and earth-shaking. Humans possessed a survival advantage that was not technological or biological. It was cultural, psychological, and completely unique in the known galaxy. They did not survive by becoming stronger or tougher. They survived by making hostile environments feel like home. The report's final paragraph became one of the most quoted texts in galactic history. The human survival advantage lies not in their ability to endure hardship, but in their ability to find meaning and joy even in the worst circumstances. They do not simply adapt to hostile environments. They transform them into places worth living. This ability appears to be unlimited by the actual danger level of the environment, making humans potentially capable of colonizing worlds that would destroy any other known species. 3 weeks after the report was published, the first joint exploration requests began arriving at the Human Colonial Authority. Species that had once viewed humans as primitive suddenly wanted them as partners for their most dangerous missions. But Hyun-woo was not paying attention to galactic politics. He was too busy teaching alien scientists how to make bread. It turned out that most species had never figured out fermentation, and they were fascinated by the process. The key, he told a group of Vorthak researchers, is patience. You cannot rush good bread. It takes time to develop the flavor. Crystal Mind, the lead scientist, glowed with curiosity. This process serves no survival function. The nutrients are the same whether the grain is fermented or not. Why do humans add this? Unnecessary step? Hyun-woo smiled as he kneaded dough in the station's kitchen. Because it tastes better, and because taking time to do something right, even when you are in a hurry, reminds you that you are more than just a biological machine trying to survive. You are a person who deserves good food. The aliens watched in fascination as he shaped the dough and put it in the oven. They were beginning to understand that for humans, survival was not just about staying alive, it was about staying human, and that perhaps made all the difference in the universe. 6 months after his rescue, Hyun-woo found himself standing in the cargo bay of the largest colony ship ever built. The New Horizons stretched for 3 kilometers from bow to stern and carried representatives from every major species in the galaxy. It was heading toward a Class Y world that had defeated 3 previous colonization attempts. This time would be different, they hoped. "Are you nervous?" asked Dr. Soo-jin, the mission's cultural specialist. She was one of the human experts, assigned to help translate Hyun-woo's survival methods into practical colonization techniques. "A little," Hyun-woo admitted, watching the final supply containers being loaded. "It is one thing to survive alone on a hostile world. It is another thing entirely to help build a colony there." But the galaxy had decided that humans possessed something unique and valuable. The Galactic Colonial Authority had received over 200 requests for joint missions in the past year. Species that had once thought of humans as primitive now wanted them as partners for their most dangerous expeditions. Captain So Young, recently promoted and given command of the New Horizon, approached them across the busy cargo bay. She had requested Hyun-woo specifically for this mission, partly because of his expertise and partly because they had served together before the crash. "Final inventory check," she announced, holding up her datapad. "We have standard colony supplies for 18 months, emergency equipment rated for Class Y conditions, terraforming gear that should help us process the atmosphere, and most importantly," she gestured toward a special climate-controlled section of the cargo bay, "seeds, cooking equipment, and ingredients for making bread, plus everything needed for pizza production." The alien crew members were still getting used to humans' unusual priorities. Vorthak engineers had initially questioned why so much space was devoted to food preparation equipment when they could carry more survival gear instead. Drakmori security officers wondered why humans insisted on bringing seeds when the planet might not support agriculture at all, but they had learned to trust human instincts about what was actually important for long-term survival. Commander Steelclaw, the lead Drakmori warrior, walked over to join their conversation. His species had lost more soldiers to hostile worlds than any other, but he had volunteered for this mission after studying Hyun-woo's methods. "I have been thinking about what you said during the council sessions," Steelclaw said. "About the difference between surviving and living. My people focus too much on combat, not enough on adaptation." "Combat has its place," Hyun-woo replied. "But you cannot fight a planet forever. Eventually, you have to find ways to work with it instead of against it." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All hands, prepare for hyperspace jump. Colony mission. 779 is officially underway." As the New Horizon entered hyperspace, Hyun-woo made his way to what had become the most unexpected center of activity on the ship. The communal galley, originally designed as a basic food preparation area, had been expanded into something resembling a cultural exchange center. Every evening, crew members from different species gathered there to share meals and learn from each other. The Nelith had discovered that humans' approach to communal dining helped them understand individual consciousness better. The Vorthak found that cooking together improved their ability to work in teams. Even the proud Drakmori warriors had started joining the nightly gatherings. "Tonight we learn about fermentation," announced Kristall, the Vorthak scientist who had become fascinated with human cooking methods. Its crystalline body glowed with anticipation as it helped arrange ingredients on the long tables. Hyun-woo smiled as he watched alien crew members trying to knead bread dough. A Drakmori warrior was being surprisingly gentle with the delicate process. A Nelith consciousness was learning to coordinate its gas-form body to handle solid ingredients. Even the ship's AI had requested sensors in the kitchen so it could participate in the learning process. "The important thing to remember," Hyun-woo explained, "is that making bread is not just about the final product. It is about the process. Taking time to do something carefully, even when you are busy or stressed. It reminds you that you are more than just a survival machine." Dr. Soo-jin helped translate the concept for species that thought differently than humans. What he means is that cultural activities serve a psychological function that goes beyond their practical purpose. They help maintain mental stability and group cohesion under stress. Over the following weeks, as they traveled toward their destination, the communal kitchen became the heart of the ship. Crew members shared recipes from their homeworlds. They invented new dishes using ingredients from multiple species. They told stories about their cultures, while waiting for bread to rise or soup to simmer. Most importantly, they learned to see food preparation not as a chore, but as a way to build community and maintain hope even when facing uncertain futures. The destination world, designated as Colonial Target 47, appeared on their screens after 3 weeks of travel. The planet looked as hostile as their reports had warned. Violent storms covered most of the continents. The atmosphere was toxic to most oxygen-breathing species. The surface temperature varied from freezing cold to burning hot, depending on the time of day. Previous colonization attempts had failed within months. The first expedition lost half their team to atmospheric poisoning. The second lasted longer, but eventually abandoned the mission when their equipment started breaking down faster than they could repair it. The third had been more successful, establishing a small research base, but they evacuated after losing several members to local predators. "Sensor readings confirm the reports," announced the science officer. "Class Y hostile environment, unsuitable for colonization by conventional methods." Captain So-young looked around the bridge at her mixed-species crew. "Good thing we are not using conventional methods." The first landing shuttles launched toward the planet's surface while storm systems raged across 3 continents. But this time, they were not just carrying survival equipment and scientific instruments. They were carrying seeds, cooking supplies, and most importantly, knowledge about how to transform hostile environments into homes. Hyun-woo was in the first shuttle, along with a mixed team of humans and aliens who had spent months learning from each other. As they descended through the toxic atmosphere, he felt the same nervous excitement he had experienced during his first survey mission years ago. But this time was different. This time he was not alone. The shuttle set down in a sheltered valley, between mountains that might provide protection from the worst storms. As the team began unloading their equipment, Hyun-woo noticed something that made him smile. The first thing they set up was not the communications array or the atmospheric processors. It was a portable kitchen. "Old habits," Captain So-young said, noticing his expression. "But you taught us that some habits are worth keeping." Within hours, smoke was rising from their temporary cooking area. The smell of fresh bread drifted across the hostile landscape, carried by winds that should have been carrying only the scent of danger and death. Other shuttles landed nearby, bringing more colonists and supplies. But unlike previous colonization attempts, this group did not hunker down in sealed shelters, fighting the planet while waiting for rescue. Instead, they began the slow process of learning the world's patterns and finding ways to work with them. Hyunwoo helped establish the first permanent kitchen in a cave system similar to the one that had saved his life months earlier. As evening fell and the day's storms began to build, colonists from 4 different species gathered around tables made from local stone, sharing food and stories while the hostile world raged outside their new home. "Do you think it will work?" asked Dr. Sujin, cutting a slice of pizza made with local ingredients they had tested and approved. Hyunwoo looked around at the mixed group of beings who were learning to see this deadly world not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a challenge to be understood and adapted to. "I think it already is working," he replied. "We are not just trying to survive here. We are trying to build something worth surviving for." Outside, the storms continued their eternal dance. The planet remained as dangerous as ever. But inside, their cave, representatives of the galaxy's major civilizations, sat together, sharing food and planning for a future where the impossible had become merely difficult. And in the kitchen area, fresh dough was rising for tomorrow's bread, a symbol of hope and continuity that would have seemed impossible to the first colonists who had tried and failed to tame this world. The new frontier was not about conquering hostile environments. It was about learning to make them feel like home. And for the first time in galactic history, that seemed not just possible, but inevitable. The universe was vast and dangerous and full.